Hi, welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. Today we begin our look at the third quarter of 1973 with music and news in the months of July, August, and September. There's a lot going on, a lot to get to, so let's get started right away with a look at music. On the first chart of the quarter, July 7th, 1973, the number one album in the country was George Harrison's Living in the Material World. This was in the second of what will eventually be 5 weeks at number one. Paul Simon's There Goes Rhymin' Simon was in the first of 2 weeks at number 2. At number 3 was Paul McCartney and Wings' Red Rose Speedway. This had been number 1 for the first 3 weeks of June, right ahead of George Harrison's album, and following the Beatles collection, The Beatles 1967 to 1970. The Beatles and former Beatles will hold the top spot on the album chart for 9 consecutive weeks in 1973, from May 26th to July 28th. At number 4 was the only album still in the top 10 from the beginning of the previous quarter, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. This had gone to number 1 on April 28th. Pink Floyd will launch a second North American tour supporting the album in September, playing an additional 17 shows in the South and on the West Coast. At number 5 was the Carpenters' Now and Then. This will go to number 2 on July 21st. At number 6 was Led Zeppelin's Houses of the Holy. This had been number 1 for 2 weeks in mid-May during the first leg of their mammoth North American tour. After a break beginning June 4th, the second leg of the tour will commence on July 6th, playing an additional 16 shows in the Midwest and the East. The tour will close with 3 sold-out nights at Madison Square Garden, which are recorded and filmed for a proposed theatrical release. On July 29th, the date of the final show, it'll be reported that profits from the first 2 nights of the show at the Garden have been stolen from a safe deposit box in New York's Drake Hotel. The money, said to be between $180,000 and $203,000, will never be recovered and the crime is never solved. Getting back to top 10 albums, at number 7 was Deep Purple's Made in Japan. It'll drop back out of the top 10 on July 21st, then return 3 weeks later, peaking at number 6 on August 11th, 1 spot higher than their 1972 album Machine Head, which will simultaneously be hitting its peak of number 7. At number 8 was the Beatles' 1967 to 1970. It had peaked at number 1 on May 26th. The companion set, the Beatles' 1962 to 1966, had peaked at number 3 the same week. I'm purely speculating, but I wonder if the success of these 2 album sets made someone at Capitol wonder if a double set of hits by their other big 60s rock act might be a good idea. More on that, of course, when we come to 1974 and Endless Summer. At number 9 was Carole King's Fantasy album. This will go to number 6 for 3 weeks beginning July 21st. And rounding out the top 10 was Diamond Girl by Seals and Crofts. This will peak at number 4 on August 18th. Turning to top 10 singles, on July 7th, the number 1 single in the country was Will It Go Round in Circles by Billy Preston. Paul Simon's Kodachrome was in the first of its 2 weeks at number 2. At number 3 was My Love by Paul McCartney and Wings. Despite the lyrics coming in for a lot of derision, this was the first record in a long time that had sounded like classic McCartney. And the guitar solo by Wings' Henry McCulloch was undeniable. It had spent the first 4 weeks of June at number 1. At number 4 was George Harrison's Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth. Easily the standout track on Living in the Material World, it made a great single and had spent the last week of June at number 1. At number 5 was Bad Bad Leroy Brown by Jim Croce. It'll go to number 1 for 2 weeks beginning July 21st. At number 6 was Clint Holmes' insufferable hit Playground in My Mind. It had been number 2 on June 16th and June 23rd. At number 7 was Shambhala by Three Dog Night. It'll reach number 3 on July 28th. The Carpenters' Yesterday Once More was at number 8. It'll reach number 2 on July 28th. Right Place, Wrong Time by Dr. John was in the second of its 2 weeks at number 9. I'm gonna love you, love you, love you, just a little more, babe, by Barry White, his first big hit, had gone to number 3 on June 23rd. Top 10 singles that would come and go in the third quarter included Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy by Bette Midler, a cover of the Andrews Sisters' number 6 hit from 1941. It'll be number 8 for 2 weeks beginning July 21st. Natural High by Bloodstone will go to number 10 on July 21st. Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple was originally released in 1972. It'll reach number 4 for 2 weeks beginning July 28th and give beginning garage bands a surefire crowd pleaser they can play for years to come. Seals and Crofts' Diamond Girl will go to number 6 for 2 weeks beginning July 28th. And The Morning After by Maureen McGovern, the love theme from the Poseidon Adventure, will go to number 1 for 3 weeks beginning August 4th. Brother Louie by The Stories will be number 1 for 2 weeks beginning August 25th. Live and Let Die was the theme from the summer's blockbuster James Bond movie, and, given their recent records, a surprisingly assured and strong single from Paul McCartney and Wings. It flies up the chart and hits number 2 for 3 weeks beginning August 11th, behind The Morning After, and in the third week, behind Brother Louie. Gilbert O'Sullivan will follow up his 1972 smash hit Alone Again Naturally with Get Down. It'll go to number 7 for 2 weeks beginning August 11th. Uneasy Rider by Charlie Daniels will go to number 9 for 3 weeks beginning August 11th. And The Monster Mash by Bobby Boris Pickett and the Crypt Kickers, the original version, the same one that had gone to number 1 in the fall of 1962, was back on the radio and back in the charts. The resurgence didn't seem connected with it being used in a movie or a TV show, and it wasn't even Halloween. My best guess is that it had something to do with the nostalgia for pre-Beatles music that was going strong in '73. It'll hit number 10 on August 11th. Please let me know if you have any information or theories on why this bounced back so strongly at this particular time. Feelin' Stronger Every Day by Chicago will hit number 10 on August 18th and again on September 1st. Diana Ross's Touch Me in the Morning will go to number 3 on August 25th. Al Green's Here I Am, Come and Take Me will hit number 10 for 2 weeks beginning September 8th. Say, has anybody seen my sweet gypsy rose by Dawn, featuring Tony Orlando, will go to number 3 on September 15th. Gypsy Man by War will go to number 8 on September 15th. And Ma Maria by B.W. Stevenson will go to number 9 on September 29th. In new album releases in the third quarter, on July 1st came Jim Croce's Life and Times. Released on July 6th was Jethro Tull's A Passion Play. Despite some poor reviews, this will knock Chicago 6 from the number 1 spot for 1 week on August 18th. And released on July 15th was We're an American Band by Grand Funk. They come into your town, they help you party down. Released on July 23rd was Long Hard Climb by Helen Reddy. Cat Stevens' Foreigner album was released on July 25th. It'll go to number 3 on September 1st. Released on July 26th was Tres Hombres by ZZ Top. It'll break into the top 40 on September 29th, 1973, then drop back down the chart and won't reach its peak of number 8 until nearly a year later on August 10th, 1974. Also released in July was Under the Influence Of by Love Unlimited. It'll peak at number 3 for 2 weeks beginning on February 26, 1974, after Love's Theme becomes a hit early in the year. And Love Devotion Surrender by Carlos Santana and Mahavishnu John McLaughlin. It'll go to number 14 late in the summer. On August 1st came Roberta Flack's Killing Me Softly. On August 3rd, Stevie Wonder followed up last year's excellent Talking Book album with another strong album, Inner Visions. On August 7th came the release of 3+3 by the Isley Brothers. It'll go to number 8 on November 10th, driven by the number 6 hit single, That Lady Part 1. On August 28th came Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On album. And on August 31st, the Rolling Stones' Goat's Head Soup. The Rolling Stones seemed a little bit unsure of where they wanted to go with their 1973 album. It had some great moments, but it seemed a little all over the map stylistically and a slight step down from the consistently excellent studio albums they'd been making since 1968. Nevertheless, it'll be another huge success. Also released in August was Brothers and Sisters by the Allman Brothers Band, Deliver the Word by War, Los Cochinos by Cheech and Chong, and the soundtrack to the hit film American Graffiti. It was a double album collection of hits from the late 50s and early 60s. Side 2 kicked off with the Beach Boys' Surfin' Safari, which was featured in the scene where Mackenzie Phillips' Carol and Paul LaMatte's John Milner debate the merits of surf music. Side 4 ended, as did the film, with the Beach Boys All Summer Long. For a movie set in 1962, including All Summer Long from 1964 was an anachronism, but it's used over the end credits rather than coming from a radio or something, which makes it passable, and it undoubtedly captured the spirit of the ending perfectly. The collection will peak at number 10 early in 1974. And released on September 11th was Art Garfunkel's first solo album, Angel Clare. This will go to number 5 on November 10th. In news in the third quarter, the U.S. Senate's Watergate hearings, which began May 17th, continued airing on TV most weekdays for most of the summer, concluding on August 7th. On July 16th, White House aide Alexander Butterfield testified in what was expected to be a pretty routine appearance. It's uneventful until Butterfield casually mentions the fact that all Oval Office conversations since 1971 have been taped. Naturally, the committee realizes that these tapes could settle the question of what happened. Nixon refuses to release the tapes, which begins a prolonged legal battle and a new phase of the Watergate investigation. Later in the month, former top presidential aides John Ehrlichman and H.R. Bob Haldeman testified before the committee, largely refuting John Dean's testimony and increasingly what the evidence indicates. As the summer goes on, members of the Watergate Committee become well-known personalities themselves, particularly the chairman, Democratic North Carolina Senator Sam Ervin, with his sharp sense of humor and simple country lawyer persona, and ranking Republican member Tennessee's Howard Baker, known for his vast, complex vocabulary. By the fall, all members of the committee have become celebrities on some level, with Ervin even cutting an album of stories, observations, and recitations. The committee hearings end on August 7th. The fight for the Oval Office tapes continues in the courts. On July 28th, the second Skylab crew is launched. They'll remain in space conducting experiments for 59.5 days, setting a new U.S. duration record for spaceflight and returning to Earth on September 25th. On September 20th, after much promotion and publicity, comes Bobby Riggs versus Billie Jean King in The Battle of the Sexes. The men's tennis champion of 1946 and 47, 55-year-old Bobby Riggs, had challenged 29-year-old current women's champion Billie Jean King to the match, he claimed, in order to prove his assertion that women were inherently inferior tennis players. It's much more about hype and spectacle than sports, with lots of trash-talking press conferences in the days before the match, and each player making an outrageously grand entrance. As for the match, Billie Jean King easily defeats Bobby Riggs. As goofy as the event is, it does help popularize women's tennis, and probably contributes to the overall vogue for tennis and tennis playing in the 1970s. Sadly, on that same night, September 20th, 1973, popular singer-songwriter Jim Croce is killed along with 5 others in a plane crash in Louisiana following a concert there. And that's where we'll leave it for this episode. I hope you'll join us next time when we will talk about movies, television, and the Beach Boys in the summer of 1973. Meanwhile, I look forward to your comments on this. Please hit like if you don't mind and subscribe if you haven't. I always appreciate that. Have a great week. Thanks for watching. Bye.